Hi, everybody. I want to talk a minute about a strategy for helping to facilitate effective discussions for our students called visual thinking strategies. It's also kind of shortened by VTS, the acronym. And the whole goal with visual thinking strategies as a discussion tool is to teach students how to engage in discussing with one another by asking questions, sharing different perspectives, and actually revising and rethinking their perspectives along the way. So there's a lot of research. This has been out there for a long time on visual thinking strategies. It was designed by a man named Philip Yenawine, along with Abigail Hausen, and they were focused at first in museum research. So they really wanted to find ways to help patrons who are visiting art museums to have ways to talk about the art that was more than just, I just noticed it's got a lot of red or something like this, but to really kind of think more critically about the art. And since that time, it's really been adapted into the schools, and it's got a really rich set of research that supports using these strategies in classrooms and with students. So at this point, I am going to have you stop this video and go watch this introduction to VTS video that will really give you a good glimpse into what it is and how it's worked. So go ahead and stop this video and then watch this video. Okay, welcome back. I hope you really enjoyed watching that. I'm always blown away about even very young children's abilities to think critically about what they're looking at with art. So as you noticed, I just wanted to give a summary of the procedures that you would use. So you need, if you're going to use visual thinking strategies, beginning with art, and I do suggest that you do this with pieces of art first, because art leaves space for all of that thinking in ways that sometimes other things they don't think of. But I am going to talk in a minute about then transferring this kind of thinking and talking from art to other content areas. So here are the key steps. You silently observe a focal piece of art. And it needs to be done in a group setting, because the power here is in having the conversations or the discussions go back and forth. So after silently, and sometimes during the silent observation, I'll have students jot down some things they're noticing. And then think about the question, what is going on in this picture or this photograph or whatever the piece of art is. And so they think about that question while they can jot down ideas. Then the next step is contribute your ideas and observations to the group. Now I've done this a couple different ways, where it's just with the whole group, like you saw in the introduction video. I've also done it where at this point, I have students turn and talk in pairs or small groups, and then we move to the whole group. I like the pairs and small groups when we are first learning how to use the strategy, because some students are still nervous to share their thinking with the whole group, but they're more comfortable doing it with just one person or a small group of people. And often what happens when we go to the whole group, that person may still be shy, but one of their group members will go, Sally had an amazing idea, share what you were thinking, Sally, right? Or, things like that. So they'll really support each other in that, taking a risk to put your ideas out there. As people are sharing, you listen to others' contributions and build on them respectfully. Here, you may need to front load or pre-teach some ways to do that, such as some sentence stems, like, oh, I see what you're saying, but I was thinking blah, blah, blah. Or I think of it differently than you do because blah, 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 blah. Or just simply, I disagree with what you're saying. I think blah, 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 because blah, 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 right? So if we pre-teach how to use those kinds of sentence stems, that can help them with that respectful discussion part. And then at the end, we come to a set of understandings as a group. Sometimes those understandings hold two competing ideas. The reality is, in our world and in our lives, we do this all the time. And so it's important for students to also understand how we can hold different ideas and perspectives and be respectful of those. Okay, I want to show you an example. This was a little research project I was doing with a group of third grade students. And this is one little excerpt as the students were viewing this photograph that we had up. I'm just going to read through the transcript a little bit for you. Student 1, he's a singer going around to play for people. Student 2, yeah, and that little girl's asked if she could play his extra guitar. Student 3, but do you think he would carry around 2 guitars? I don't think so. I think that girl's family already had the guitar, and when she heard him playing and singing, she got the guitar and came out. Student 4, but they're too poor to have a guitar. Teacher, what makes you think that? Student 4, well, you can see that the street and all up to their house is dirt, and those 2 kids look like their clothes are not that great. Student 5, but the girl who has the guitar has better clothes, but she doesn't have any shoes on. Teacher, what else can we find? Student 6, so if they are poor, why is that guy there? Teacher, can we answer that by looking? Student 7, I don't think so. I think that he's a nice guy who likes to go to poor neighborhoods and cheer them up with his music. Teacher, what do you see that makes you think that? Student 7, well, that girl with the guitar and that girl in the white are smiling, so I think they like it. That girl isn't smiling, referencing the smaller girl in the back. So I don't know what she is thinking. Student 4, we haven't talked about where this is. I think it isn't in the United States. It's Africa or something. Teacher, what makes you think that? Student 4, well, the people are black and the wood sticks here that are the fence aren't all the kinds of fences we have here, and they made me think of Africa. Student 8, but I'm black and I live in the United States. Student 4, oh, so maybe it's not about the people being black and more about the fence. Student 8, yeah, I haven't seen fences like that here. Okay, so what happened in this discussion? I want to talk about kind of these kinds of thinking and things that come out in these discussions. Observation, going from few and random to more, more systematic, moving from seeing things singly to seeing things in context, and they became more detailed and nuanced as the conversation moved on. Drawing conclusions, making inferences and interpretations based on observation. And this went from a few, maybe none, to several and perhaps many. From idiosyncratic to more grounded in what makes sense in the image, right? So anytime that a student said something without providing the evidence to support what they were saying, my role as the facilitator was to kind of prompt them, what do you see that made you think that, right? Notice that in the excerpt that let me go back to, in this excerpt of talking how many times did I speak? So there was the first time, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I only spoke 4 times in this whole piece of discussion. And when I spoke, I never gave my own opinion or my thoughts. My only purpose in this was to foster them towards deeper thinking. So when we think about how students went for more idiosyncratic kind of thinking, like that's just what I think, they moved to more grounded thinking and what makes sense in the image, combined with background experiences and things like that. Another thing we saw is students were citing evidence to back up their interpretations. We also often call this evidential reasoning. I think this because, right, we want our students to engage in this level of thinking during discussions. Students were also considering a range of possibilities. They were able to brainstorm by themselves and then as part of a group and actually accept multiple interpretations. This was including the opinions of others. They were able to speculate amongst a variety of possibilities and to express it through the use of qualifying language. It could be this or it might be that, right? And then there was actually some revising going on. At first I thought, but now I think, right? So we think about at the end of that excerpt where the one student was challenged on just saying this is in Africa because the people are Black. One of the students say, well, I'm Black and I live in the United States. Now that previous student revised their thinking based on this interaction. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe that's not so much it, maybe it's more about the fences, right? And know that this was just a small excerpt out of this whole global conversation. In this particular case, students really did dive deeply into their biases and preconceived notions about poverty, about race, and in all sorts of things came out in this particular conversation, which is pretty usual for these visual thinking strategy interactions. Finally, there was a lot of elaborating. They go back to an observation or an idea that they expressed earlier, and they amplify it or build on what was originally said. And sometimes that sounds like what I meant was, or I think I was thinking that because, right? And that's where they are questioning one another. This is the piece that I find the most difficult in facilitating discussions, to get it out of my realm of asking questions and get the students asking each other questions and answering each other's questions so that it isn't dependent on me as the teacher, but they're actually engaging in these self-propelled conversations in the classroom. Okay, so let's talk about what this might look like in other topics of discussion and content areas. So when I've done this in classrooms, I use the art for a good extended period of time. We'll do it every day for about 2 weeks. Every day we'll have a visual thinking strategy time. After about 2 weeks, they are experts in engaging in this kind of discussion. And now we are ready to move that discussion style into any of the aspects of our learning. So here are just a few little, things that we do. So in the language arts, thinking about reading and writing discussions. Now, speaking, listening, and viewing are all inherent within visual thinking strategies, right? So think about reading and writing. We might be reading a common story together. And a student says, I think the character did it because of this. And then I can, again, prompt with the question, what did you read that made you think that? See, now we're moving from what did you see that made you think that to what did you read? And we call this text evidence. right? Common Core asked us to make sure our students can back up what they're thinking about a text based from the text, right? Another question, what might the author have made, why might the author have made that writing move? This is all about writing craft. Why do authors do what they do, right? These are discussions that the students can have with each other and not just you as a teacher. What would you have done if you were, right, in this situation? And again, here we are sharing different perspectives or points of view because different students might do different things based on different points of view that they have. Okay, think about in science. We might be reading a scientific article about an endangered species or something like that. So we might want to ask the question, what motive might an author have for writing what they wrote? And who benefits or who is harmed as a result of us accepting what this person is saying? Another thing, if we're doing experiments, what other explanations could there be for what we found in our experiment, right? And again, we're always providing evidence for our thinking. In social studies, who is writing this account and whose voice is not being heard? I mean, I think about, when we read about particular experiences, like take Custer's Last Stand, right? The way that event has been written about really highlights General Custer, who lost the battle, right? Which is pretty interesting because most of the time we don't lift our leadership up unless they were victorious. So it begs the question, why has this been written this way, right? And whose voice is not being considered? And in that case, many times it's those in the American Indian communities that were part of that. What was the social or cultural context at the time that this happened? So if we are studying history, or we're studying economics and aspects of economics, we would want to know what was around that. Like, let's say prohibition, right? Why did we do such an extreme law and go after it for so long? Like what was happening in the context at that time? And these are all the kinds of questions students then can engage in these ongoing discussions. And then math. Are there other ways to figure this out, right? What do I already know and what do I need to figure out in order to figure out this problem or what's going on? So I just wanted to show how beginning with visual thinking strategies using art can then be transferred into facilitating effective discussions in any topic or content area. Okay, so our references here are the video that you watched and also the book that I referenced, and I hope you enjoyed thinking about ways that you can facilitate effective discussions amongst your students.